Good afternoon. My name is Fareed Siddiq. I'm a board member of Global Cleveland and a managing director at a large financial institution. I'm originally from Pakistan, and I've lived in the Cleveland area for over 45 years. Welcome to the International Community Candidate Forum for Mayor Race at Global Cleveland. We are excited to host this non-political, non-endorsement, community-centered conversation. We look forward to our discussion and positive momentum for Cleveland's future and that it will produce. If English is not your first language, please check the Zoom option bar for interpretations function. If the option is available, we will have live interpretations available. If you click on the tab, you should see an option for languages. Thank you. Before I introduce our moderator and candidates, I would like to thank our partners, and there are quite a few. Asia Inc., Asia Town, Badono Community of Greater Cleveland, British American Chamber of Commerce, Building Hope in the City, City Club of Cleveland, Cleveland Council on World Affairs, Council on International Programs, USA, Cleveland Cultural Gardens, Collaborative Chambers Alliance, Connecting Cleveland, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Global Shapers Cleveland, NAACP of Cleveland, Ohio Progressive Asian Women Leadership, Refugee Response, Smart Development Inc., US Together, USCRI Cleveland, Young Latino Network. Thank you for putting this on. Would not have been possible without you. Now, before I explain the guideline of this forum, we have a short video with Mo Kentner for our national partner, NAE, the New American Economy.
Hello, and welcome to today's Candidate Forum with Global Cleveland. My name is Mo Kentner, and I'm the Director of State and Local Initiatives at New American Economy. At New American Economy, we're a bipartisan research and advocacy organization that focuses on making the economic case for better immigration policies at the federal, state, and local levels. Now, immigration may feel like an abstract issue debated at the national level through very technical, political, and bureaucratic constraints, and that's partially true, but immigrant integration happens at the local level. How communities attract and welcome newcomers helps lay the foundation for whether a person stays, works, starts a small business, or raises a family. In Cleveland alone, there are over 125,000 immigrants. They pay over $1.3 billion in taxes and help fill workforce needs in healthcare, manufacturing, and other critical industries. They're also over 60% more likely than the US-born population to start a small business in Cleveland. They not only help fill workforce needs, they create jobs for other Americans. And that is something that can't be captured at the national level. Those impacts are happening on the ground every day in Cleveland's communities. Our local elected officials have a huge impact on people's day-to-day lives. And when policies are established that let everyone live up to their potential, everybody benefits. So thank you again for participating in this critical conversation, and remember to vote.
Thank you, Mo. Now we'll quickly review the guidelines before we move into questions. All candidates will receive 2 minutes to respond to each question. If a response hits 2 minutes and 30 seconds, they will be muted to allow for efficient movement through the questions. Also, any and all derogatory language or personal attacks will result in a candidate being muted and the next candidate being allowed a chance to answer. This is supposed to be a civil discussion. Let's please keep it that way and respect everyone's in attendance. Next, I would like to introduce the running for office. Candidate Justin Bibb, born and raised in southeast side of Cleveland. Justin is a proud son of social worker and a first responder, a business person, nonprofit executive, and a civic leader. Justin Bibb has dedicated his career to making cities safer, healthier, and more just. Ross DiBello is an attorney who lives in West Park with his wife Lauren and their dog Baby. After working in the Justice Center for 7 years, he's running for mayor to attack our systematic problem by proposing to change the system. Bashir S Jones, currently serving on City Council from Ward 7. Bashir Jones is seeking to serve as mayor of Cleveland because he believes our city needs bold, courageous, visionary leadership to move us forward. He wants to create an environment that is safe and inviting where people from all walks of life can thrive personally and professionally and attract people and businesses from all over the globe. Kevin J. Kelley is a current Cleveland City Council President and the councilman for Ward 13. Kevin is a tireless advocate for Clevelanders and lives in Old Brooklyn with his wife Beth and his 5 daughters. Dennis Kucinich. Dennis Kucinich is an experienced leader, having served on Cleveland City Council in the United States and in the United States House of Representatives, and at one point mayor of Cleveland. Mr. Kucinich plans to use his vast experience to build a better and brighter future for Cleveland. Zachary grew up in Mount Pleasant. Zachary Reed has always been committed to Cleveland. In 2001, Zach was appointed to Cleveland City Council and went on to win the seat in November, fulfilling his lifelong dream of representing the neighborhood in which he grew up in. Zach represented the southeast side of Cleveland, which includes Mount Pleasant, Union Miles, and Mill Creek Falls neighborhood until 2017. Finally, I would like to introduce our 2 moderators. Sanjeev Kapoor, having recently returned to Cleveland from Sao Paulo. Sanjeev is a partner at Jones Day who specializes in international mergers and acquisition and corporate transactions. He's fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, German, French, and Hindi, and served on a number of nonprofit boards, including those of Global Cleveland, Lutheran Hospital, Notre Dame College, and CIP USA. Girish Rao is Information Service Director at Lubrizol Corporation and has been a resident of Northeast Ohio for 28 years. An immigrant from Bangalore, India, one of the sister cities of Cleveland. He's an alumni of both the Ohio State University and Case Western Reserve University. He also serves as a board member of Global Cleveland. Without further ado, I would now hand it over to Sanjeev Kapoor for our moderators to begin.
Thank you, Fareed. Thank you for the introduction. As a shout out to the Brazilians in the audience, and having just returned from Brazil, I'll say boa tarde e seja bem-vindos to this forum, or good afternoon and welcome to this forum. Girish and I will alternate the questions. I will start first and then he will proceed, and we'll go back and forth. As was mentioned, each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. And I'll start with a general question. What is it's directed to each of you, what is your experience serving and interacting with the international community in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio at large? How has this shaped your understanding of Cleveland and your role as a leader? And I guess we'll start with Mr. Bibb.
Thank you, Sanjeev, and thank you to Global Cleveland and all the partners for putting together this important conversation about how we can make Cleveland a more welcoming city for all of our immigrants moving to the city of Cleveland. And for me, you know, it really starts with my experience living abroad for a year. So I spent a year studying at the London School of Economics, and I remember being in my international finance class, and the person to my right was the daughter to the Secretary of State of Monaco, and the person to my left was the son of a sheikh from Saudi. And we were having a conversation about 2008 primary elections for president. And we were talking about NAFTA and the NAFTA trade deal and the Doha round of trade talks. And we were talking about how American trade policy impacted the ability for farmers across the country, across the world rather, to compete. And in that discussion, I learned so much about how our world is interconnected. And throughout my campaign, I've been talking to many different groups across the city about how we can build a more inclusive city, how to become a more welcoming city. And I'll never forget that lived experience from being in London and what it means to me as the next mayor of Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. Mr. DiBello?
Thank you. My experience interacting with the international community is probably in a few different ways. My brother was a college soccer player. He ended up playing soccer at Dayton. And a lot of the kids that he played with his whole life were of the Croatian and Serbian cultures out in the East Side. And it was just a pleasure to, and I still do to this day, you know, go to Croatian weddings and become friends with all the players that my brother played with. And he traveled the globe playing. And so that was always fun and educational. I grew up out on the East Side. In the summers, I was raised by my grandparents out in Little Italy. Very familiar with the East Side and Little Italy. And with the judge at the Justice Center, I campaigned throughout the county, city and county, and we did not discriminate. We went everywhere to every community and just learned a lot and opened my mind and saw how much furthering the international community furthers us, right? And that's what we are. We are an immigrant society, growing together, learning together, trading together, and bettering the place for our children. So, and working at the court, I also did see some cases, you know, between cultures and within the same culture. And that's always opened my eyes and to know that, hey, I got to learn the nuances, right? I got to learn nuances because I don't know everything about everything, and I need to be educated, and seeing court cases is another part of that answer for me. So hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you, Mr. DiBello. Mr. Jones?
Thank you so much, Sanjeev. I appreciate it. In Global Cleveland, I thank you. One of my favorite organizations as a city councilman, anytime that we had our guests come into the city, I would always be one of those who was an ambassador for the city and took people from different countries who visited our country, our city around and letting them see the greatness of our city. As a, thanks, Zach. As a world traveler, Zach, if you could put your on mute, brother. As a world traveler, I've been to majority of countries. I've studied many different languages. And even within my own neighborhood in Ward 7, one of the most diverse in regards of international community. One of the largest Asian community is in Ward 7. We have a very large Eastern European community in the St. Clair Superior area, as well as a growing Puerto Rican population in the Superior area. And one of the big issues that I find within this city is you have a lot of residents who have an issue with City Hall as a result of the language barrier. We're having an issue with Spanish, let alone Arabic, Mandarin, Chinese, Portuguese, Swahili, so forth and so on. We're a very diverse city, but City Hall is a barrier to the progress of the international community. And as mayor, we're going to make sure that there is no language barriers. And we're going to make sure that the city services and the city in itself is a welcoming place to every single resident of our city.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelley?
Okay, yeah, please accept my apology. I would like to first of all thank Global Cleveland for putting this on. This is a very important question to start off, and it's really important to set the direction for the future of the city of Cleveland. Most of my interaction with the international community, a lot of it has been with when we are greeting dignitaries that are coming to City Hall, whether it's council generals, ambassadors. That's the role of the council president, is to be that ambassador and to put on the face of Cleveland and to welcome people to Cleveland. But where I really learned a lot about the international community and where we were not, how we could be welcoming, is when I was first elected council president, when it was brought to my attention that Cleveland did not have a robust or any language access plan. And I work with international community, with legal aid, with the administration. It's not me. To put together a language access plan to make sure that everybody felt that they were a part of the city of Cleveland, that Cleveland was welcoming. And this is a complicated thing to do because in addition to changing forms and changing the website and making sure that some of the was more welcome, to train all of our public facing staff in terms of how do you interact with people in different languages. We chose the top 8 languages. Every time you go into City Hall right now, there's a board and you can point to your language and you can have interpretive services. It was non-existent when I became council president. And right now it is a robust program. And I'm working with Global Cleveland to help me spot check it, so how we can improve it. And I think we have a long way to go, but becoming a more welcoming, more inclusive city, we should never stop striving for that.
Thank you, Mr. Kelley. Mr. Kucinich?
Thank you, and thank you to Global Cleveland for holding this forum. As indicated at the start, true to the mission of Global Cleveland, I am greeting the General Counsel of Poland, and I must be there at 7 o'clock, which means I'm going to have to leave this meeting early. But I'm sure that I couldn't have a better excuse with the group that I'm speaking to. I have a lifelong connection with the ethnic and cultural diversity of the Cleveland area. And that not only as a private citizen, but as a public official who made it a point to reach out and touch every single group in this area at one time or another over the course of the last half century and more. As a member of the United States Congress, the diplomatic community would come into State of the Union addresses, special addresses to Congress, and other events 3 to 4 times a year. I'd get there early. And when the whole diplomatic community was in place, maybe a half hour before the event itself started, I went to each one of the ambassadors and I greeted them, sometimes in a few words from their own language, to have a chance to make a connection on behalf of my community and on behalf of the United States Congress. I did that over 50 times in the course of my career. As a result, I have friends around the world who are in government. I've been able to serve my own constituents in a district by being able to reach out through the contacts I made with the diplomatic community. Of course, I've traveled the world. I've met with many world leaders from different ranks. So I have that awareness. I have the understanding, I have the ability to communicate. And as a result, as mayor, I intend to help Cleveland reach out to the world in a way that it hasn't done before. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kucinich. Mr. Reed.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Let me first apologize to my brother Bashir Jones for disrespecting you with my hay fever and allergy. I'm sorry about that. I'll try hard not to allow that to happen again to my brother Bashir. With my 17 years as a council member, it gave me the opportunity to attend many forums at the City Club, many forums at the Union Club, where international leaders were brought in, ambassadors were brought in from around the world. And it gave me the opportunity to go and listen and learn from those individuals and learn from the groups that had brought them in about ways that we could make Cleveland a more inviting and more accessible city for our immigrant brothers and sisters. Many of you know I was the Intergovernmental Affairs Officer for the San Francisco Housing Authority. And under the leadership of Mayor Willie Brown, I had the opportunity to represent him on more than one occasion across San Francisco, which you know is an international diverse city. And gave me the opportunity to represent the mayor on more than one occasion at different international groups and conferences throughout the San Francisco area. And once again, learning and speaking to those immigrant and international groups about ways that we can make even San Francisco a more inviting city. And then last but not least, I represented the United States in Dubai at an international conference where I spoke to international leaders from all across the world about ways that we can get immigrants to work on projects, not only in Dubai, throughout the Middle East, but throughout the world. So I have a long, extensive experience of working with the international community. And if you look at my my financial reports over the years, you'll see a number of individuals that are immigrants and my international community that have helped and assisted me throughout my career.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Girish?
Thank you, Sanjeev. I will be moving on to the next question, and we will start with Mr. DiBello, as was indicated. This question is on a very important topic around the population of the region and of Cleveland, right? So our power is through our population. As we grow, the region grows, we all succeed. So numbers from 2010 to 2018, we have shown a loss in our population, and about 37,000 immigrants moved into Cuyahoga County in that period. And without that move-in of the immigrants, our loss would have been a lot more. So these new residents have offset the population loss by about 45%. It is a large number. So what can we do? What are you planning on doing to attract more immigrants to move here, right? We are competing against all the other cities and regions in the country. How can we attract more of them to move here and continue this important trend so we can grow as a region? So I will start with Mr. DiBello.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we have a lot of immigration law firms here. You know, off the top of my head, right? The first one that always comes to mind is Margaret Wong, but there's many. And, you know, I think CIS does good job processing paperwork. You guys have developed the partnerships. Fiscally, there are policies that I'm proposing that I think are going to make native born and newcomers want to move here. That's one of my goals in running, is to end this like 50-year, 60-year cycle of population loss. So I'm proposing like a big policy legislative platform where government will work better for everybody, and people will want to be here because City Hall is more responsive and listens. So I think that that's a big thing in this arena is getting the translation services, right? Whether it's Arabic, sign language, you know, work with greater OCA, you know, as Council President Kelley said, right? We've got to be able to hear people for them to know that we're making the improvements that they know their, you know, area of town needs. So opening up the information divide, right? Attacking that beyond the fiscal and economic policy, beyond the law firms, the immigration law firms helping and legal aid, helping immigrants, you know, get on their feet, get incorporated, get financing, get their paperwork processed. It's being able to hear all people, whether you're English speaking or you know, whatever your primary language is. So that'd be the first thing, listening to the community. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. DiBello. We'll move on to Councilman Jones.
Thank you so much. One of the things I would like to create is an Office of International Relations as mayor. And there's two things that we have to do better. One, we have to take a better care of the international community here. You know, one of the things I fought for in my community, you had a lot of xenophobia, a lot of Asian businesses that were being threatened and disrespected and being told that they were the reason for the coronavirus. And it made a lot of residents within the city feel very uncomfortable. You know, I, along with my council colleagues, created legislation, but legislation is not enough. We had to put some boots on the ground. So we did a cash mob, and that business that was affected by those issues, we invited every business and every community member to come out and support it. People came from all across the region to assist. So our international community needs to feel that they have, that they are respected. You know, we have this thing called EB-5 where we allow international community to come into town and to do some investments in return for a visa. But listen, you got Case Western Reserve here, you got Cleveland State University, you have these brilliant international members who are coming to the city. We need to have a better way to stay in contact with them, connect them with the community that's here, and as well as figure out a way to keep them here. Listen, the only thing international right now that we are pushing is healthcare from Cleveland Clinic. How can we do a better job of doing business overseas? So this Office of International Relations would do a better job of making sure that the city is connected with the international community, as well as do business outside of this country with different countries who would want to do business here if they just knew more about it. I had the chance to go to India with Global Cleveland, got a chance to go to India and visit and learn more about the politics within this beautiful place. And we went to the Taj Mahal and to Mumbai and to other places and just learn how other countries engage in politics. Cleveland has the same opportunity here. We should be an international city. We should at least be doing business with Canada, being right across the water. But we have this amazing port that's underutilized. As I said, we have a lake that is underutilized, and we have this beautiful city that really needs to be marketed better to not only surrounding states, but the entire world.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Moving on to Council President Kelley.
Thank you. There are a number of things that we can do to improve in this area. I think we need to look at, as I said earlier, what I learned when we were forming our language access plan is, I don't think most people really appreciate the amount of diversity, the diversity of culture that we have within the city of Cleveland. And we need to make sure that every ethnicity has, every nationality, everybody from any country has perfect access to City Hall. So we need to make sure that we have all the we're able to speak every language that is presented to City Hall. We need to make sure that we have liaisons to communities, and we also need to make sure that we can be providing opportunities to people. Make sure that we're providing job opportunities to people as well, both to the immigrant and refugee communities. And I would also, as Councilman Jones suggested, I believe that an office of an international relations office, an office of immigration, of refugee, not refugee response, that's something else, but an office that would specifically deal with international and refugee issues should be a part of City Hall. It should be within 601 Lakeside, and make sure that we are constantly reaching out and doing better to make sure that everybody feels welcome at City Hall.
Thank you, Council President Kelley. Moving on to Mr. Kucinich.
I think it's important to learn the philosophy of each one of us with respect to how we view the world. Because once you know that, you'll be able to predict what a city's immigration policy might be. I see the world as one. I see the world as interconnected, as interdependent, and that human unity is the basic truth of our existence, that we're all one. Now, from that approach, as a member of Congress, my congressional office served the international community. And we must ask, well, it is important to attract people to Cleveland. What are we doing to make sure that those immigrants who had, in some cases, a very difficult journey to get to the United States, that they find support to stay here? Because we understand the immigration policies have often been unfair and harsh and separated families, even though individuals have been in this country for many years. So that has to be a focus of a city government, to stand with the existing immigrant community and do everything we can to keep those people who are here present and continuing to be with their families, their businesses, their loved ones, their friends. Beyond that, how do you attract anyone to any community? Well, it has to be safe. It has to have great services. That attracts people everywhere, whatever their ethnicity. And finally, the advantage that I have is that because of my existing connections with the international community, which I built over a period of decades now, I'll have the chance to help Cleveland step forward powerfully to become a truly international city, and to establish the relationships that can be established, even more than a sister city basis, with cities around the world. Our work is here in Cleveland, but we extend to the world. And I already have the awareness of how to do that, and I already have a global approach to things. as the saying goes, we think globally and act locally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kucinich. We'll now move on to Mr. Reed.
Thank you very much. How do we attract more immigrants to move here and continue this important trend? I think we attract them by, first of all, showing leadership and showing that the leader at the top is willing to open the doors to the city to our immigrant brothers and sisters around the world. And my 17 years on city council, many people know that that was the reason I was able to go and represent the United States in Dubai and being able to go to these different forums here in the city of Cleveland, so because they know that I was open and ready to listen and learn from our immigrant brothers and sisters and find ways that we can work together. Many of you know that I just finished a 3-year stint as the Minority Affairs Coordinator for Frank LaRose, the Secretary of State, which gave me the opportunity to travel throughout the state of Ohio, listening to our immigrant brothers and sisters about ways that they wanted to either start a business, maintain their business, or grow their business. So I have that experience. The other thing that I would clearly do is open up an Office of International and Economic Affairs. I think that we know a number of our immigrant brothers and sisters want to come and they want to start a business. And City Hall needs to be an open place for them to know and understand that they can find funding, they can find resources right at City Hall. And as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I am going to have an economic development department that understands that we're going to attract those immigrants. You know, one of the things we talk about is the 37,000 immigrants who moved into Cuyahoga County. I'd like to know how many of that 37,000 immigrants who moved into Cuyahoga County actually moved into the city of Cleveland. I want them to move into our wards and our communities and our neighborhoods. I want them to start businesses in our wards and our communities and our neighborhoods. And I want them to know that as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I'm going to give them the funding and the resources they need to be able to start those opportunities in my wards.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Finally, we go to Mr. Bibb.
Well, I know on a personal level what it feels like to be an outsider in a foreign land, having lived abroad for over a year. And what makes you attached to a place is a job or education, a community that's strong, that's vibrant and inclusive, and a culture that makes you feel like you belong. And it's those ingredients we need to make sure that we're elevating and prioritizing throughout the city of Cleveland to ensure we can attract immigrants and keep them living throughout the city, because they're an important part of making sure we can have the most inclusive comeback in our city's history coming out of this pandemic. I think it first starts with, better partnering with organizations like Global Cleveland and Refugee Response. They should be an extension of City Hall to ensure that our immigrants have the right pathway to build a great life in the city of Cleveland when they arrive. And the city of Philadelphia, through their Welcome Philly program, is a great example and a great model for Cleveland to follow moving forward. Secondly, we are a great city that has many great places to worship. And it is important that we continue to elevate our faith-based community in this strategy to welcome our immigrant population across the city. And I also want to make sure that our faith-based community is also an extension of City Hall to ensure we're providing that culture and that connectedness that our immigrants deserve all across our community. And then lastly, it all goes back to making sure that the next mayor has a policy agenda and a governing agenda that's going to continue to put people and neighborhoods first. It starts with having safe and secure neighborhoods. It also starts with making sure we have a modern and responsive City Hall. And it also must start with ensuring that we have a community that prioritizes investing in good quality jobs all across our community, and having a culture of yes versus a culture of no is critical to make that goal a reality.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bibb. Very good answers from all of you. I will now turn it over to Sanjeev for the next question.
Thank you, Girish. We certainly have a lot of thoughtful responses. Our next topic is entrepreneurship. And if you'll permit me, I wanted to say something about entrepreneurship based on a recent experience I had. I spent a week about a month ago down in Fort Bliss, Texas, working with the young kids between ages of 12 and 18 who had traveled some 2,000 miles on their own with very little resources. And they had come to this country to escape poverty and gang violence and other factors. And when I think of, after that experience, when I think of entrepreneurship, I think of these young kids who traveled those 2,000 miles, and I believe they'll be great entrepreneurs for this country. And so with that preface, we have over 1,000 immigrant entrepreneurs in Cleveland, and they are 38% more likely to be entrepreneurs than US-born residents, likely born because of necessity. How will you work to ensure that immigrant entrepreneurs receive opportunities through the Economic Development Office and other city programs? Mr. Jones?
Thank you so much for this question. You know, before I answer it, I really want the listening audience, I really want you to ask a serious question. You know, I'm a graduate of Morehouse College. My degree was African-American Studies and History. And people can say what they're going to do, but I want you to push on what have they done? What have they done? And the fact is that if we look at the history, you do your homework, you will find that many people, very few have stood up and stood by. Matter of fact, some people even have put different cultures against one another, let alone standing beside them and making it a unified situation. The fact is that don't listen to what people say they're going to do. Give examples of what you've done. This is what I've done to deal with immigrant entrepreneurs. When the Asian community was facing a backlash, I stood with them. When people didn't want to go to Asia Town and eat that amazing food, I went there. I let them know that they have somebody that is standing beside them. And the fact is that if we want economic growth to take place in the international community, it can't happen if there is a city hall that doesn't even have the interpreters to reach the people. I had businesses within my community who could not receive support from the city, help from the city, because they weren't even able to have the applications necessary to get the support that they needed. And we had to fight, and ultimately we got it done. But if you don't have a council person fighting for you, you could easily miss out on these opportunities. So what I want to do is we're going to create this Office of Small Business Incubator. And with this small business incubator, it's going to be focused on and it's going to have people of all different cultures and ethnicities who can speak the language of the people. You got to be able to speak the language. And the language is not just the tongue, but it's also about understanding the culture of the people. So City Hall must represent the city. And if you have people within City Hall who can speak the language of the people and who are not afraid to stand with the people, then that is the key to making sure everyone receives economic opportunities.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelley?
Thank you for the question. Entrepreneurs in general, small businesses are 2/3 of our jobs. And I've had a great opportunity to really get to know a lot of small business owners and really the struggles that they go through and just how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, to start a small business. You know, there's a misnomer that if you own a business, you are somehow of good economic means. I've heard the stories about how people have to max out credit cards, borrow from their family and friends, not take a paycheck so that they can pay their employees while they're getting started. And all of these challenges on the front end are harder for the immigrant community, of course, the refugee community as well. But yet, as is stated, this is a very entrepreneurial group. We can really encourage them to make the investment. So if I were to identify what are the barriers to starting a small business that we need to deal with, it is that access to capital on the front end. And I think that we need to, as a city, have a policy for immigrant entrepreneurs to make sure that the capital to start the business is not the barrier that keeps them from starting the small business. So as I mentioned before, I've heard the stories of people that max credit cards, borrow from the family and friends to get the upfront money. Well, what if they don't have credit cards? What if locally they don't have the family and friends that they can borrow the money from to start that small business? It's really, the policy has to be assisting immigrant entrepreneurs with the capital, the upfront capital that is required to start a small business. We do this through many programs the city has, but we need to make sure that we are making these opportunities available and make a specific outreach to immigrant entrepreneurs to let them know what assistance is available and how do we expand that to get them over the barriers to starting a small business. Because again, these businesses, these entrepreneurs, they employ and support themselves, but they also create jobs and employ others to put food on their table and create economic vitality. So that's what I would do. It would be the Department of Economic Development, but we would focus like a laser on the capital startup that is required for immigrant entrepreneurs.
Thank you, Mr. Kelley. Mr. Kucinich?
We have to keep in mind the city that we're talking about here. The city of Cleveland has about 20% of its population living on $10,000 or less a year, a third of the population living at or below the poverty line, and half the children in the city living at or below the poverty line. Cleveland is a city that is sorely beset with a whole range of economic problems. Now, having said that, we have to take a look at what the city's assets are, where we can help move an economy forward. The city has $1.8 billion a year that come through the general fund and associated special funds, spending through the city of Cleveland, $1.2 billion through the Board of Education, total of $3 billion in assets that are controlled directly and indirectly by the mayor of the city of Cleveland. Certainly, with those assets, we have the ability to reach out to the immigrant community and to help welcome immigrants into economic opportunities, to provide seed capital for business incubators that would then show growth. At the same time, though, it is urgent that the city of Cleveland move to rebuild small business districts in what are now depressed areas of the city. This is where the immigrant community could be helpful, because the skills that may be obtained that can help local residents, there can be partnerships that can be obtained. We have to look at Cleveland as it is in order to come up with the plans to get it to where we want it to be. So I would, I certainly will do everything I can to see micro-lending programs brought forward with the $511 million the city will receive. It's important that we go to the people in the community and get their opinion as to what kind of program should be created. But when we do that, we want to make sure that no one who comes from an immigrant background is going to be denied an opportunity to take part in that economic progress. But we need to have a special concern about those who have been living in this city for decades and have been ignored. So it's a balancing that has to take place in order to keep all of us unified. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kucinich. Mr. Reed?
Thank you very much. I'll take on the challenge of my brother, Bashir Jones, and tell you exactly what I have done. For 3 years, I was the Minority Affairs Coordinator for Ohio Secretary of State, Mr. Frank LaRose. As I said, they gave me the opportunity to travel throughout the state of Ohio, speaking to the minority community about ways that you can start a business, maintain your business, or expand your business. And I remember one of the conversations we had in Columbus, and that's where I learned that the Columbus population of 1 million people, over 100,000 of those citizens that live in Columbus are from the Somalian community. So I actually went and sat down with the leadership in the Somalian community, learned that they had their own Chamber of Commerce. And over the 3 years that I was the Minority Affairs Coordinator for Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose, it gave me the opportunity to sit and learn what did the Somali community want to become more involved in the community of Columbus. So I brought them to the Secretary of State, and we were working together before I left in March to see how we can do that. As the Minority Affairs Coordinator for the Secretary, I traveled to Cincinnati, spoke to the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, found ways that we can work together. So as I said earlier, my administration, my Economic Development Department will know first and foremost, we are going to have to set aside resources and funding and give it directly to the immigrant community, because I know they want to start businesses, create jobs and economic opportunities in our community, and I'm going to give them that helping hand to be able to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Bibb?
I want to quote somebody that I admire, one of my favorite political strategists, James Carville. He said, "It's the economy, stupid." I say that because this is all about jobs, 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 and creating a right culture inside this city for good quality job growth. And I think it starts, particularly as we want to do a better job of supporting our immigrant entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs in general, is we got to change the current structure of our Office of Economic and Community Development. Right now, it's way too siloed. I was just talking to a small business owner a couple months ago, and he said he had to take nearly 400 jobs out of the city to Stowe because City Hall couldn't get their permit done in time. Now, imagine the missed opportunities that we're leaving on the table because the current way we do business at 601 Lakeside Avenue is broken. And so what I want to do, that I've learned from my work with working with mayors all across this country, is I want to have an integrated office of economic and community development to make sure that we have a one-stop shop for you to start a business in the city of Cleveland. I also want to make sure we're bringing those basic city services to every library across the city to bring government back to the people. That is essential to ensure that we can create a climate for good jobs to grow all across our city. I also want to say this, coming out of this pandemic, we only get one shot to get this recovery right. And we should be using a portion of the money we're getting from President Biden to make it virtually $0, nothing at all, to start a business in the city of Cleveland. That would be a big jump start to our local economy, and that will go a long way to better supporting our immigrant entrepreneurs all across the city.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. Mr. DiBello?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with a little bit of what everybody said. You know, I think that when an immigrant small business or refugee small business or cause wins, we all win. So we want to market like supply drives and listen to the folks that are lifting up small businesses and see what kind of resources and paperwork and processing they need, like the building hope in the city. Refugee response, right? My wife actually just went to beat the deadline, the 5 o'clock deadline, and pick up our weekly community supported agriculture. And I've lost weight, right? The economy wins, everybody wins. So it starts with more translation ability at City Hall, right? Verbally and with paperwork and processing. It's true that, and we may have to use financial incentives to get the hires that we need to get us straight there. We are number one in the nation in poverty, right? That's too little money to live on. People have to have affordable housing where they're not spending over 30% of their income on their rent or their home. And I want to start a public bank, right? Because what the prior candidates have spoken about with financing is so true. You know, if you can't get affordable lending, the for-profit industry may eat you up, and we're trying to stabilize the social safety net. So it is small businesses and creating new businesses that creates more jobs than the trickle-down economics, right? We just saw today, we gave away $117 million to big business that didn't need one of those dollars. So fostering small businesses, and again, the language gap, right? And that includes financial literacy, getting incorporated, and City Hall can help immigrant and refugee small businesses better operate, as Mr. Bibb said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiBello. Girish?
Yeah, so moving on to the next question. This is a very straightforward question. We'll start with Council President Kelley. Would you and how would you support adding new members and staff to the Community Relations Board that will represent the changing immigrant population in Cleveland, such as an African immigrant community liaison, an Arab immigrant community liaison, something like that? What's your position on that?
My position is something that we absolutely have to do. And in terms of how do you do it, that is something that is an administrative function that could be done on day one. It's just a matter of having the will to do it, and I have the will to do it.
Okay, thank you, Council President Kelley. Moving on to Mr. Kucinich.
Your question opens up the door to a really amazing possibility. I've had the opportunity to address the United Nations on 3 separate occasions. It's an amazing thing to be at a General Assembly meeting and look out at people who represent the world. Just think if our Community Relations Board was expanded, not just from the standpoint of course, the African immigrant community and the Arab immigrant community, but more than 100 ethnic groups that we have in this area. Think of what would happen if we formed our own kind of Cleveland's own version of a United Nations. We had meetings where every community would have a chance to explain what was going on, and created kind of a mini UN here in Cleveland. We have the capacity to do that because we have so many different groups in our area. So I'm going to just, as a result of your question, just put that out there as something that I would like to work with you to start. I think it'd be amazing and fantastic to have people from every walk of life and every area of the world participate in discussions that would start in Cleveland and could become a model for other communities as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kucinich, for that answer. Moving on to Mr. Reed.
Thank you once again for this opportunity. I'm going back to my brother Bashir Jones, saying, "What have we done? What have I done in this arena?" As the Minority Affairs Coordinator for the for the Minority Affairs Coordinator for Secretary of State Frank LaRose, I, along with my colleague Monique, we persuaded. Didn't take much persuasion, but we persuaded Secretary of State Frank LaRose to put together a diversity committee from across the state of Ohio that would be able to sit down on an ongoing basis with the secretary and talk about what issues was affecting their community and how we could work together, whether it was voting, whether it's economics, whether it was housing, whatever it may be, and what way we can do that. And what we were able to achieve was we were able to bring Arab Americans together, Hispanics together, whites together, Blacks together, the Somalian community together, Asian communities together, all under one umbrella, speaking to the secretary on an ongoing basis. And with that model that I was able to help inform for Secretary of State Frank LaRose, that's the model we're talking about here. Bringing those individuals to help make our city a better city to live, work, play, and worship. And I'm willing to do that with you and other organizations. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Moving on to Mr. Bibb.
Absolutely. And I want to go a step further because as a leader, I truly believe, especially in this moment right now, that public policy and the hard work of policymaking must be grounded in the lived experiences of our residents and reflect the diversity of every resident in the city of Cleveland. And so in my first 100 days as the next mayor, I'm going to do a top-down audit of every department and every board and commission. And I'm going to do a survey to determine what does our staff look like? What does the demographics of our boards and commission look like? And how do they reflect the diversity and the lived experiences of our residents? I've seen this get done, and I've worked on this in other cities across the country, and this is a good step in the right direction to ensure that city government reflects the lived experiences of everyday people, not only at the frontline level, but in my cabinet and also on every board and commission.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. Mr. DiBello?
Thank you. So how would I support adding new members? It would be a political will thing, a timeline thing, a priority thing. I would try and do it in January. I don't know if you guys, if Global Cleveland has tried the last 16 years and failed on this, but you guys have made the partnerships, and we do have numerous groups in Cleveland, right? Immigration Working Group Cleveland. Again, we have all the immigration law firms, Rapid Response, IRTF, Americans Making Immigrants Safe. I mean, there's just tons of them, you know, Greater Cleveland OCA. You guys are gonna tell me who to hire as liaisons. And, you know, this question is a little bit deeper in that there's like the neoliberalism, which has happened, right? We've defunded government. You need money to pay the salaries of these new liaison positions. But for me personally, I would support it via starting to talk with the groups if I won in November and make the hires in January. So I don't see it as much more complicated than that.
Thank you, Mr. DiBello. Mr. Jones?
Thank you so much. Once again, I just, you know, this race, man, for the listening audience, the race is beginning to heat up. A couple weeks until the first vote. And, you know, you got to really start dissecting what people are saying and listening to not what people say they're going to do, but what have they done. And I have a lot of respect for everyone that's on here. But one of us on here was a mayor. My good friend, Dennis Kucinich, was a mayor. And the city of Cleveland didn't just become diverse. The city of Cleveland has been diverse for a very long time. So it's not about what you're saying, what you're going to do. The question is, what did you do when you had it? And I think that's the problem. That's what I really want the city to understand. You know, the second thing is that it's not as simple as saying an African immigrant community liaison. We understand that Africa is an amazing continent. The Somali is a different language than the Nigerian. Nigerian is a different language than the Ghanaian, right? So you have to be able to understand that community in order to be able to work with them. And also the Arab is different. The Yemeni is different from from Al Maghrib, right? Somebody from Morocco is different from Saudi, or somebody is different from, you know what I'm saying, Dubai. So the point I'm making is that you have to understand the community. And guess what? Some people may not even necessarily want a job. They just want to have access to be able to take care of their community. You know, right now, Brother Zach brought up a good point as far as the Somalians here in the city. I've been working with them over on West 130th. Right now, you look at the Somali community, Columbus and Minnesota are the two largest populations. But Cleveland can have that opportunity to have a larger Somalian community here or a larger Pakistani community, but you don't feel connected to City Hall. So what I'm saying is that there are people who are on this call, and we're going to start calling out, that have had the opportunity to do exactly what you're asking, and they didn't do it. They did not do it. And there are people who have been working with the global community, who've been working with Global Cleveland, who understands that in order for us to become a stronger city, we can't keep fighting over crumbs. We need to bake a bigger pie and get out of this mindset of immigrant and resident, rather than we are all Clevelanders, everyone is welcome, everyone has the opportunity to bring something powerful to this city. But the rhetoric of what you're going to do, rather than what did you do when you had the opportunity, we're going to begin to dissect this. It's really important.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. Very thoughtful answers from everybody. And I will move it over to Sanjeev for the next question.
Okay. Our next topic is refugees. And maybe I can again give you some personal observations there from my time down in Fort Bliss, Texas, where we were working with these unaccompanied minors. I spoke to probably several hundred of them, and most of them have family in the US, and they were going to be reunited with their family in the United States. And of course, most of them were going to California, Texas, Florida, New York, New Jersey. And then there were some outlier states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Tennessee, but Ohio was not one of them. So we are obviously not the place where the bulk of refugees are coming. On average, 500 to 700 refugees are resettled to Cleveland every year from countries such as Nepal, Afghanistan, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Somalia, although as we've just heard, we're not doing as well as Columbus in that area. The Biden-Harris administration announced that they will increase refugee admissions to 125,000 a year nationally, up to 3 to 4 times as many families as they did this past year. How do each of you plan to open Cleveland for these new residents and provide refugees with the opportunity to contribute to Cleveland? Mr. Kucinich, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious that the minute that there's an announcement through the State Department that refugees are going to be resettled, that the city of Cleveland should step forward and indicate officially that it's welcoming people, and to set up not only welcome, but set up contacts through churches and social service agencies to make it possible for people to resettle and be integrated into the community. I mean, it's a moral responsibility that we have. The whole country has that responsibility. And I'm glad to see that President Biden is going to step forward and to increase refugee admissions. I think that it's really a moral challenge for our community. And Cleveland, by the way, over the course of many years, has met that moral challenge. This community has always been welcoming to each new group that has moved in to our city. I mean, that's why we have, well over 100 different nationalities in Cleveland, because we are a welcoming city. That's why people for generations followed their forebears into the Cleveland area, so that because the word was out, this is a great place to live and to work. So I think this is one area where Cleveland has real strengths, and Global Cleveland, of course, plays an important role, as do the other organizations that have taken part in this. And I just, before I conclude, I just want to say to my brother, Bashir Jones, that I don't fault you for not knowing much about my term as mayor of the city of Cleveland, because I don't know that you were born yet.
Thank you, Mr. Kucinich. Mr. Reed.
Well, you asked the question, how do you plan to open Cleveland for these new residents and provide refugees with the opportunity to contribute to Cleveland? I plan on opening up Cleveland by them seeing on their international TVs, listening on their international radios, that the mayor in the city of Cleveland, when they hear a president stand up and put a Muslim ban in place, that they know the mayor of the city of Cleveland went to the International Hopkins Airport and stood there with many other refugees and immigrants and said, this is not fair, it is not right, and therefore we should not have a Muslim ban. So as mayor, that's what they will see first and foremost. Someone standing beside them. When a president stands up and puts babies in cages, I'm going back to what my brother Bashir said, not what I've talked about, this is what I've done. When the president put our babies in cages, I went to Public Square and stood with our brothers and sisters from the immigrant community and said, this is not right and this is not fair. What they will see is a mayor that is willing to go to that front line, not send out press releases, not to talk about it just in a little press conference, but to actually put his life and his own body on the line for them, to let them know the same way, because we're all immigrants here in this United States of America, except our native brothers and sisters. So I want them to see that the leadership is going to go to the front line for them. And when they see the leadership in the city of Cleveland doing that for them, then you know what? They're going to say, that's the city I want to go to, because if the mayor can do that, I know he's got my back.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Bibb?
You know, we could spend a lot of time talking about past records and what folks have done and what they're going to do. And I think it's important to ground this discussion on, you know, what are the core attributes and characteristics of making Cleveland a great city? Because if we were a city of opportunity that was prospering, we would already be attracting more refugees and more immigrants to our city. For me, it's a city that prioritizes and has inclusion and equity embedded in its DNA. It's a city that understands the importance of making sure that regardless of your race, class, color, or creed, or sexual orientation, that you can start a business and achieve your God-given potential. It's a city that makes sure that, I don't care if you live in Mount Pleasant or West Park, that you're gonna have a safe and secure neighborhood and the cops are gonna show up on time when you call. Those are the key ingredients of what makes a great city. Now, to your specific question, as the next mayor, number one, every immigrant and refugee that comes to this city, I'm going to send them a letter signed by me, welcoming them to our city and making sure they have all the information they need from Global Cleveland and other key local nonprofit organizations to get a head start, to get their new life started right here in the city. Secondly, we have to do a better job of training and guiding our local employers on how to better hire our immigrants and refugees in this community to close that connectivity gap, because that's one of the biggest barriers we see right now in terms of giving them the employment opportunities they need to succeed and live their best lives. It's all about eradicating the same old way of doing things, starting anew, and being bold and honest about the hard work we have to do to really make sure that Cleveland can be a city of opportunity that works for everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. Mr. DiBello?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the first thing is doing a declaration. Of course, we are a welcoming city and we want this expansion. We're going to support in every which way. I do think it gets to the last question a little bit about hiring or having liaisons, right? Who speak the language. Communication is key. It takes money, resources, creativity to make the message on the Statue of Liberty, come true, right, in any American city. So that does take money, right? So we've got those ARPA dollars, coming in. We're going to work with Secretary Fudge. We're going to seek out similarly minded philanthropic interests. If we currently have a sponsorship program, I'm not aware of it. If we do, right, we want to expand upon it for affordable housing or, staying with a sponsor, getting an employer who's willing to employ new residents, right, new immigrant refugee residents. But yeah, we've got to devote the funding. We've got to find or create beds. We need affordable and public housing. And the affordable financing as well. So, and I think Refugee Response and the other groups that are doing this work now with the capacity now, the 15,000, will tell us what they need for the expansion to 125,000. So listen to people.
Thank you, Mr. DiBello. Mr. Jones.
Thank you so much. And to my friend, Mr. Kucinich, majority of us wasn't, but I do want to say that this question is, good, man, you funny, man. This question, man, is really touching for me because, as a Muslim American, man, Zach hit it right on the head. The Muslim ban affected families all across this country, particularly here in the city of Cleveland, which we have a very large Pakistani community, a very large Somalian community, and Afghanistan. It really hurt this community. And I got a lot of phone calls. You know, as many of you know, I'm the first Muslim city councilman in Cleveland's history. And a lot of communities felt that I was their voice. And they would reach out to me and I would go and sit with them. And particularly if I can, just focus quickly on the Somalian community who just opened up a new business, a new mosque rather, on West 130th. And they're not getting any help. The city has basically turned their back on it. And no matter what that we try to do, it seems that everywhere they turn, there's a barrier. I want to say thank you to the Catholic community. The Catholic community has done a phenomenal job in supporting the refugees who have come here and assisting them with housing, assisting them with food and job options, so forth and so on. So what we have to do is, the plan is we must work with the Global Cleveland. We must work with Global Cleveland. We must work with the diocese. We must work with the religious organizations within the city who these people feel most connected to, and we have to assist them. We have to connect them with the Cleveland Food Bank. We have to connect them. You know, Ross said it, hit it out the park. You got to connect them with better housing. They have the ability, this beautiful community of refugees here in our city who have gone through hell and back, come to our city and not asking for much. They just want to be heard. They just want to be helped. They just want to achieve the American dream that they heard about while they were in camps in their country. And I think that Cleveland should be the place that lets them see that. We can do it. All we have to do is hear their voice, have representatives within City Hall, and push resources, over $500 million, right, coming into the city. Some of those dollars can be utilized to help our immigrant community, economic development, housing, as well as food, better food options. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Kelley?
Thank you. This is just a critical issue, and I really want to just applaud the Biden-Harris administration for the acts that they took. And this is something that can really benefit Cleveland. It would be great to get 3 to 4 times as many families to resettle in Cleveland, the refugees to resettle in Cleveland. In terms of to the question of, you know, how do we plan to open Cleveland? We really just have to look to refugee response. We don't have to look too much further for the model of what works. And, you know, with that, it involved, you know, reaching out to landlords that can house the refugee families, working with CMSD to set up Jefferson School as a home for a lot of our refugee families, setting up Ohio City Farms to provide employment opportunities. We have the model, and we need to just scale that up for the amount of refugees that we hope will choose the city of Cleveland as their home. I believe that refugees can transform a community. My wife is from Utica, New York. And for those of you that know the story of what happened during the Bosnian conflict, they essentially, the refugee population essentially stabilized and saved a declining city by starting small businesses, by occupying homes, by fixing up homes, and becoming part of the community. They did it through the use of resettlement houses. We can do that. That is not something the model is out there. It's a matter of scaling up with resources. It's a matter of valuing the great benefit that the city would have if we were to become more welcoming, be able to welcome more refugees. We've already talked about population decline. We've already talked about, you know, the need to provide, you know, economic vitality and provide jobs and provide, you know, more population vitality to each of our neighborhoods. This is the way to do it. So to answer the question, just to wrap up, I would essentially say what we need to do is model up what we know works for refugee response, make sure we're properly funding and resourcing our resettlement agencies and settlement houses, and make this a priority of the city of Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Kelley. Girish, next question for you.
Thank you. This will probably be our last question with our time constraints. I would recommend the audience, if they have any questions, to please put it into the Q&A tab in the webinar so we can start collecting them and address them to the candidates. The next question, moving on. This question is about the international student and the student community we have in the greater Cleveland area, right? So I was lucky enough, I came here to this state of Ohio in 1992 in December with a suitcase, right? Not the best timing, I agree. I'd never seen snow before, but I got here and I've stuck it through. I got a degree from Ohio State, I got a degree from Case, and there is something about this region. Once you're here, you build those connections, you can't leave, right? I have friends all over the country, classmates who keep asking me, why are you still there in Cleveland? I'm like, hey, you no place like Cleveland, right? So the question is really, we have hundreds of international students who are already here, to Case Western, Tri-C, CSU, John Carroll, you name the university, who are not going to stay here maybe. They're going to leave and go to other places. So what are the thoughts you have? What policies can you change to address this issue where we make a better effort to retain these students who are already here, right? They're already here. So what are we going to do to retain them in the area? So with that, I'll start with Mr. Reed.
Well, I think this comes in, it's not just the international community, it's a number of students that come here from all across the nation itself, not just the international community. We just do a very bad job of retaining those students that come here for to be a part of our great universities. And then when they get that great education, they feel as if they want to leave. So what that it's more than just our international students. So I want that to be recognized first and foremost. One of the things that we've got to do is we've got to get more people to get involved in the internship programs. I mean, these individuals need to get interns. And I'm not talking about interns in their last year when they become seniors. They've got to start internships early on. They got to see the greatness of the city of Cleveland early on. So we're not trying to persuade them in that last 12 months. We've got 48 months to persuade them and maybe longer to stay here. Secondly, we got to build up a better lakefront. I mean, we don't do a better job of that lakefront. I mean, most of these individuals that are coming from other parts of our country and parts of the world, they're used to seeing a lakefront that's thriving. It has economic development. And that's why I'm the only candidate in this election that has laid out what I would do to Burke Lake Airport to free up 60 acres plus of land to put forth a real lakefront for the people of the city of Cleveland. So we've got to showcase the city. We got to put them to jobs and economic opportunities for them early on to be able to expand their minds, not just in our international students, but students as a whole. And as mayor of the city of Cleveland, I'm ready, willing, ready to do that on day one.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Bibb?
I would just say, I spent 4 years at Case Western getting my law degree and MBA, and had the distinct honor to meet many international students, and they become dear friends of mine. And one of the things I recognized during my time at Case was many of my colleagues were going to Silicon Valley, New York, Chicago, Miami, Austin for jobs. And when I would make the pitch for Cleveland, they would say, hey, Cleveland's cool, but I don't know where to go. I don't know what employers to talk to. I don't know what community I want to be a part of. It's really hard to navigate. And you see that breakdown, not just for graduate students, but also for undergraduate students all across this region. Cleveland and the Cuyahoga County region, we are a college town. We got Case, CSU, Akron, Notre Dame, John Carroll, the list goes on. And so as mayor, what I want to do in my first couple of weeks in office, I'm going to convene every college president and identify what can we do as a city to better connect with our university ecosystem to keep that talent right here in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio. That is critical. Secondly, I would also say, and I mentioned this before in my prior comments, we as a city and regional economy need to do a better job of educating our employers on how to keep good international talent right here in Northeast Ohio. We are missing out on a tremendous amount of economic value and opportunity because of that lack of education. And we got to do a better job as a region to step up. It's going to take more partnerships with GCP, Team NEO, the governor's office in order to do that. And that's something I intend to pursue as the next mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. Mr. DiBello?
Thank you. Yeah, it's got to be the change in our fiscal priorities and in our kind of inability of currently listening to residents, right? So we want to stop just funding downtown and big business and mortgage lending business and fund some different industry, right? A high tech industry. Students of all sorts are not going to stay if you don't kind of fight to help them grow and listen to them. And so I do agree with Zach Reed about creating the better environment. I think that's also a draw. But you talked about, workforce ready students at the institutions. I want to talk to the administrators at like the Thomas Jefferson Newcomers Academy, right? Like what could they tell me and tell us about this type of problem? I know that's a younger group of students, but nonetheless, they have more insight than me. All the bureaucracy, the departments, the liaisons that we talked about, that stuff's all going to help in answering this question. Sponsoring, making it feel like home to, whoever you are, for this to be your new home business-wise and living-wise, right? So we'll always get back to the affordable living and then your industry being a place that gets off the ground. So we want the international students to create the international graduates incubator. So we're going to work with the people who have the better ideas about this than me.
Thank you, Mr. DiBello. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, man. I've had the opportunity, and I recently got my master's in theology from the School of Claremont. I've studied in Malaysia, traveled to Egypt and Dubai and Brazil, Australia and India, the UK, and Ireland. And you will always find that the nucleus of any society is going to be the educational system. And what we're blessed with here in the city of Cleveland is to have some internationally known universities in Cleveland State and Case Western Reserve. And I believe that it's more than just connecting the students to economic growth in the city, but I think it's about connecting them with their community in the city so that they can feel like home. Connecting Chinese students to the Chinese Americans who are here, connecting the Arab students to the Arab community that is here, so that they feel that, a part of my faith, it says that, how you treat your guests, it says a lot about who you are. And that's why anytime that Global Cleveland brought guests in, I was one of the first people to receive the email. And I would always go out and spend time with them. So I think what's important is that I would spend time with those guests and I would take them to their community. If they was from India, I would take them to see other Indian residents here, or take them to an Indian restaurant and eat their food, which happens to be my favorite food. It's important that you connect them with their community. And I think that what the city of Cleveland must do, and as mayor, what I will do is connect with each educational institution and connect with the leaders of the community within Cleveland, connect those two. And then not only does it benefit those students to want to stay here, but it also benefits the community that is here in the city of Cleveland so that they can thrive and continue to grow and produce, members of their community who are amazing people who can benefit this society, benefit Cleveland, and benefit the community that they represent.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Council President Kelley.
Thank you. Our graduates are going to go where there is the best opportunity for them. And we need to make sure that Cleveland is that home where they have the best opportunities. Right now, there is a shortage of engineers, of scientists, of people that can do the jobs that are in demand. So anybody a new graduate has plenty of opportunity across the nation. So we need to make the case, why choose Cleveland? Why stay in Cleveland? And I think we can certainly get there through quality of life issues. But this highlights another fundamental weakness of our economy, which is a broader problem, which is businesses struggle to grow, industry struggles to grow because they don't have that workforce. They don't have enough of the skilled workforce to fill those positions so that they can grow. Just recently, Case Western Reserve, for example, partnered with Microsoft for a new quantum computing health project. And that is a great project, but we need to start asking right away, do we have the skills, the people to operate that? And it's not just going to be the computing part. It's going to be electricians. It's going to be the setup. It's a great big project. But if you look at every industry in the city of Cleveland, we're failing to train enough people to workforce needs that we have. Therefore, businesses don't grow. That leads to there being less opportunities, for graduates. And we really need to make sure that we are dealing with this on both prongs, on both parallel tracks. Make sure that we deal with the underlying issue, which is our lack of skilled workforce. Also, we need to make sure we're involved in an aggressive outreach to keep students that are here, to let them know that there's a great life here, there's a great opportunity, and there are employers here that are dying for the skills that they have, that would love to give them an opportunity. But we just have to do a better job working with the presidents of universities, employers, industry. Everybody has to come together to really work to stop the brain drain and keep the talent in Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Kelley. Sanjeev, we have some questions that have come in the Q&A panel. I think you should all be able to click on it, all the candidates, to get a preview of what the questions are that are coming in.
Okay, so we have 3 questions, and I'll choose one of them, and it's on refugees. It appears to be someone who's quite active in the refugee community. And the question says, it's good to work with refugee agencies, but they don't know the struggle of refugees except offering them service which they think best for that particular population. I guess there's some sort of paternalism there. How do you plan on working directly with leaders of these refugee communities? Have you ever visited any refugee community in Cleveland and engaged in a conversation with them apart from what you hear from agencies? So we'll start with you, Mr. Bibb, since we're back at the top of the order.
Yeah, I think it goes back to my prior comments about my philosophy on governing, right? Really grounding policymaking and doing the hard work of what a mayor has to do and really the lived experiences of our residents. And so, I want to make sure that in my administration, in our boards and commission, and in every facet of city government, that we're inviting refugees and their respective communities to be a part of city government so that we can understand that lived experience and can have that proximity to the pain and the struggles they're going through. And while their struggles may be different and unique, I think there's a lot of everyday challenges that they're going through that many residents are going through all across our city. And every employee inside my administration must share and must have that passion to understand that lived experience.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. Mr. DiBello?
Thank you. And no, so this is very educational for me. Today's actually my first day off of work of my regular job. I'd love to go everywhere here over the next 6 weeks and open my mind, right? Our bubbles are limited. So was there 7.6 billion people in the world? There's a lot of things that I don't understand that I'm sure, refugee response doesn't even understand. So we're trying to be a lifelong learner, trying to visit everybody I can, trying to close that information divide and those language barriers. So if victorious, that would be my priority, is being able to hear people and experiences and those nuanced differences that I think the question is getting at, because the answer to the question is no. I am not the guy who knows every answer to every different refugee newcomers, nuanced challenges. So I haven't. I'm happy to. Today's my first day off work, and I would love to engage in all conversations, and hopefully I can hear properly, which is always a worry for me.
Thank you, Mr. DiBello. Mr. Jones?
Thank you so much. Yes, I've had the opportunity. People will be surprised at how many of the African refugees who are here, whether those who are Sudanese or Somali or Congolese, who are here in the city of Cleveland. And you are correct. Just because you're a refugee agency does not mean that you understand the plight of the people. And what I've come to find out, especially those refugees who are Muslims, who feel very disconnected from the Muslim community here in the city of Cleveland, and not because people can care less, but because you just can't relate. And being Muslim doesn't mean that you can relate, and being Christian does not mean you can relate, or being of any faith does not mean that you necessarily can relate without sitting down with these men and women who are going through some serious struggles, who are once again having an issue with food quality, having an issue with housing, having an issue with language barriers. And it's just amazing to me how these communities are able to come to the city of Cleveland and still thrive. You know, I thought that I knew poverty until I was in the slum villages of India. So wow, this is a poverty I've never experienced before, right? So I think it's important to have a mayor who has a global perspective, but at the same time understands that in order for us to thrive as a city, every group of people must feel welcome. And the way that you make them feel welcome is by taking the time to hear their thoughts, to hear their concerns, and then also bringing somebody from their community and putting them in a leadership position to be able to assist them even greater. You know, we're still having problems in the city of Cleveland, making sure we have Spanish. I mean, this is the fastest growing language in America, the fastest growing population, and we're still doing a terrible job there. So imagine if you speak Swahili, imagine if you speak, you speak Arabic and you speak Mandarin, imagine that. So under my administration, every department will be geared with those who speak the language of the people. And when you do that, you have a better society, a better city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Mr. Reed?
Yeah, yes, to answer your question, yes. And secondly, I would just say that if you talk to the people in Ward 2, talk to the people in Mount Pleasant, they will tell you firsthand that I was not a council person that sat in his office either when it was on 137th and Kinsman or even when it was downtown. I took off my jacket, rolled up my sleeves, walked around the community, talked to the people in the community. And I'm saying to you, to my refugee brothers and sisters, my immigrant brothers and sisters, I've said this when I ran 4 years ago, I'm saying it again, every Saturday, I'm gonna open up the mayor's office at City Hall, allow anyone to come down to talk to me with or without an appointment and talk to me about ways that we can work together, ways that my administration is not working with you. Well, let's have a dialogue and a conversation together. And I think to be able to answer your question, I'm not going to be relying just on refugee organizations. I'm relying on the refugees themselves to talk to me personally. And
that's lower than at the start of the pandemic. Mark.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Girish, now let's let you ask the next question from the audience.
This question has been, somebody put it in, I think Ali did put it in at the beginning of the actual session. So it's been there from 5:30. So let me ask this. What is each of the candidates' strategy for actively engaging immigrant and international communities in Cleveland, knowing that each population has different strengths, needs, language ability, education skill set? what are your short-term and long-term plans to make this very diverse and vibrant community infused into the larger Cleveland community? So it's an integration question, I guess. So you can start with Mr. DiBello.
Thank you. I really like this question. The answer is like work ethic, work ethic, work ethic, work ethic. So to get on the ballot, right, I got almost 4,000 signatures of Clevelanders. Yeah, that's unheard of. So I love listening to everybody throughout the borders of this city. Me and the judge, me and my former boss, the judge, we campaigned in every church, at every parade, everywhere. I don't know. I just love, pounding the pavement and getting to meet new people and learn new things. So, the true answer to the question is work ethic and being an active listener and keeping an open mind. And again, the bureaucracy part of it will be, making sure that we can understand each other. Like Councilman Jones said, even Spanish, has been a problem for here in Cleveland. So the language ability thing is the big first gap, but the second thing is just opening up City Hall to the people, me going out to meet the people, and that would be about it. Just open-mindedness and work ethic.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DiBello. Councilman Jones.
We make sure Oliver has their chat on mute. You kind of interrupted my guy Ross over there, man. Listen, if you ask my friends over at Global Cleveland, they will tell you, not now in the chat, but if you ask them away from the chat, they will tell you that very few council members have been more active with the global community than I have. And I think that's the key. I think the key is for us to have this open heart for the global community. And I don't think it's just about being international for healthcare, even though I believe that Cleveland has to market itself as the healthcare capital of the world. But also we should be doing business with these amazing people from throughout their country. As the question said, there's a lot of different people with different language abilities and education and skill sets, so forth and so on. And the key is that they must be sitting at the table. We cannot make decisions on behalf of a community. We must make decisions with the community. We must hear their thoughts, hear their concerns, because we even though we're all Americans, sometimes we have different cultures, we have different understandings, we have different perspectives. And if you're not careful, you can be stepping on somebody's toe unintentionally. You can be disrespecting someone unintentionally. I can remember when I was in Malaysia and I saw this beautiful little boy and I placed my hand on top of his head. We do that here. Hey, how you doing? Touch someone's head. And the people were livid. The Malays were livid. You can't do that. I didn't know. I thought I was doing a nice thing in touching the top of his head, but that was culturally inappropriate. Well, we have to understand that everyone has a different culture and a different understanding. So the key is, once again, within my administration, you're going to see more diversity than you've ever seen before. Diversity in culture, diversity in religion, diversity in perspective, diversity in experiences, because that's the only way to have a successful city, a thriving city, where everyone has a seat at the table. And if you don't have a seat at the table, then sometimes you end up on the menu. And we don't want anyone on the menu. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Jones. Mr. Reed?
Well, first of all, I didn't have the opportunity to serve with my brother, Bashir Jones. So I'm glad to hear that someone took the baton from me and sat down with our good friend, Joe Sipperman, when they were asked if you could come and talk to the students and to international groups. Go back and check my track record. Joe will tell you firsthand I was one of the first councilmen that raised my right hand and said, Joe, I'm willing to come and talk to the community. I'm glad to see that you've taken my baton and continue that, because I think, like you said, it's very, very important. But as a councilman for 17 years, I did the same. And I think to answer your question, I think it just comes down to Ali. It just comes down to the bottom line is I'm going to take the idea that I gave to Secretary of State Frank LaRose, myself and Monique, and just basically put together the diversity committee and let that diversity committee meet with me on an ongoing basis so we can have a good conversation on how we can work together.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Bibb?
Yeah, I think this speaks to the larger question about whether or not city government in its current fashion and form is the right structure to meet the moment coming out of this pandemic. And I think coming out of this pandemic, and as we think about our city's recovery, it's important to use this election and use this moment to do the hard work of truly reimagining and rethinking what city government should look like. And I think that process starts on November 3rd during my transition, engaging the immigrant community, engaging everyday people, and helping us to do the hard work of designing how should City Hall operate to ensure we're meeting the basic needs of our residents. And one of the philosophies of my campaign is this true notion, and I've lived this throughout my life as a civic leader and as an executive. It's all about connecting the grassroots and the grass tops. And if you believe that one mayor in isolation can solve these problems, you're sadly mistaken. And in a Bibb administration, we're going to prioritize and leverage truly a collaborative leadership model to meet the needs of everyday people and to serve our residents and to make sure we get the momentum going to finally solve some of these structural problems that have failed us for far too long.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. I think we have time for one last question. Sanjeev, if you want to take one.
Okay, yeah, for our last question, I think it's a fitting question because it talks about how we can bring the community together. The person has written this question. Immigrants from different countries and faith communities tend to gravitate towards people that belong to their group, which is expected since they will share the same language and similar cultural values. I believe it is important to try to get people of different ethnic backgrounds and religions to get to know one another. Do you have any plans or ideas to try to have different communities to get to know each other and work together to make Cleveland a more welcoming and inclusive city? Mr. Jones, could you answer that question?
Thank you so much. You know, as I said, I recently got my master's in religion and from the School of Theology. And the reason why is because I really wanted to learn about different faiths and come to find out whether you're Christian, you're Muslim, you follower of Judaism, Hindu, Buddhist, we find that we're all on the same foundation, which is treat people like you want to treat yourself. You know, one of my very close friends is Rabbi Learn, and another friend of mine is Rabbi Scott, who I go to their synagogue as a Muslim and speak about the issues of, you know, W.E.B. Du Bois, he had something called the double consciousness. You know, I have the triple consciousness, being Black, American, and Muslim. And sometimes these three things intersect and sometimes they don't. So being able to speak about being Black in this society or being Muslim in this society is a strength. And working with the Jewish community right now, we're working to create a group whereas the Black community and the Jewish community, who have a lot of intersectionality, can begin to come together and understand each other a lot differently. Listen, in my community, the majority of business owners are from Palestine. They're from Palestine, you know, working with them, understanding their issues and their concerns. So you are absolutely correct. If we're going to be successful as a society, we have to be able to, even if we disagree, which I want people to understand, we don't always have to agree, but we don't have to become hateful in our disagreements. And I think that is the key. And I think that's what I'm enjoying most about this mayoral run, even though it's going to get, in the words of Nelly, it's going to get hot in here. But at the end of the day, it's really important that we are open to our differences. And when we become open to our differences, I think that we become a lot more successful as a society.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Reed.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to be able to speak to my international brothers and sisters. I know many of you on this call. I've worked with many of you over the years, and if any of you live in the city of Cleveland, I'm just going to remember my what Tip O'Neill said: they don't vote for you because you don't ask. If you live in the city of Cleveland and you want to vote for the most experienced candidate in this race, I'm asking for your vote first and foremost. I think to answer your question, well, we got to take the concept of what my good friend Angela Woodson and Mr. James Levine had done and create that International Day. Well, let's have International Day more than just one day a year on Martin Luther King and in our cultural gardens. And as many of you know, I've already proposed when I'm mayor of the city of Cleveland that we're going to cut off Martin Luther King from the lakefront all the way back to University Circle. And we're going to open it up like they do Central Park in New York and allow the people to come down and view our cultural gardens without any cars, people being able to walk, people being able to ride their bikes, people being able to skateboard, but it would give our international brothers and sisters who have gardens down there the opportunity to be able to bring more people down, welcome them down. Let's see all these great gardens down here. Let's have picnics and let's have conversations right at the cultural gardens. Not have to worry about cars speeding up and down, but just having a good family conversation right on Martin Luther King on Saturdays and Sundays. That's how we do that. I appreciate this opportunity. I love you all, brethren, and have a very good, safe weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Mr. Bibb.
Well, Councilman Jones, I hope Hot in Here is not your favorite Nelly song, because you got to give some love to Country Grandma, my brother. I mean, you know, it's Friday, it's the weekend. We got to get a little turn. But in all seriousness, I wanted to say I really enjoyed the discussion tonight. It's an important and timely discussion as we think about the next chapter in Cleveland's story. And one part of the discussion we did hit tonight was really the importance of arts, culture, and public spaces. And Zach alluded to it a little bit. When we create cities where, regardless of if you're in downtown or the east side or the west side, there's a park where you feel that you belong to, that you feel safe, that you can, have a nice family outing. It gives you attachment. It gives you connectedness. When you see public art that reflects your culture, reflects your values, reflects your lived experience, it attaches you to your city. And I get jealous sometimes when I travel to Toronto or New York or Chicago or Detroit or Atlanta, and I see that they've truly created global cities that reflect all races, all international countries. And we got to make sure that Cleveland can join that list of not only great American cities, but great global cities. And I believe for us to do that, it's going to take a bold, new, dynamic leader to move us forward. I believe I'm the right leader for the right time. I really enjoyed the discussion this evening, and I'm looking forward to seeing many of you throughout the campaign. And again, let's build a great global city together, because we can turn this moment into a movement, because I surely believe that Cleveland can't wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bibb. And Mr. DiBello, I guess you have the last word.
Thank you. And this one's another one I really like, because it personally gets to like one of the reasons why I came to think about running for mayor. From like 2009 until 2019, I went to every Democratic ward club, many parades, many ward club Christmas parties, from West Park to Little Italy to Glenville, which is extremely close to Little Italy, to Ward 1, right? And I went to these ward club meetings not with my boss, but more just because I enjoyed it. And I realized, we don't have much commingling, and our issues are so similar, right? And so I personally wanted to go propose things, but we don't have public comment at city council meetings every Monday night, right? So not everybody agrees with me on my platform, but I don't want to keep handing out money to billionaires and things like that. And I just wanted to go say that. And so when I started thinking about the root causes of our problems in Cleveland, it was that not about the listening, right? Because we can all tweet and say things, but it was that we didn't come together, right? Arm in arm, hand in hand at these Monday night council meetings and realize, oh, what's good for West Park is good for Glenville. And so to answer this question, I want to open up public comment and I want to market the heck out of it. And I want everybody from every neighborhood of every culture that speaks every language coming down to City Hall, so that maybe City Hall is even too small, right? And when it's good weather, we go outside or we go to the arena or whatever the case may be. So we need to be able to join hands at City Hall and break through kind of the segregated nature of what this question's getting at. And that would be my answer.
Thank you, Mr. DiBello. And I'll now turn the podium over to Mr. DeGrish so he can wrap up our debate. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a very phenomenal event here today. The first one of many to come, I think. We hope to make this a regular event as future elections come up. I think it gave everybody in the international community a great forum to listen to your thoughts and some wonderful ideas, right, on how to make Cleveland the global city, right? That's all our aspirations, welcoming to all races, all countries, and future growth. So with that, thank you everyone once again for attending the Mayoral Candidate Forum. We would sincerely like to thank the candidates for coming here in good faith to speak to the international community. As a reminder, we invited every candidate running for election for mayor, and everyone was given an equal opportunity to reply. For the audience, you can find answers to these questions from every candidate who completed the questionnaire on our website at globalcleveland.com. We would especially like to thank you, the audience, for coming. It is your vote that determines the next generation of Cleveland City leadership. Thank you for all the interpreters who've been very busy translating all the nuances of what was talked here today into multiple languages, including looks like the lyrics of some of the songs that were referenced. So that is incredible. We would also like to thank our incredible sponsors and partners who made these forums possible. They are on the screen. I'll also briefly like to mention them: Asia Inc., Asia Town Cleveland, Bodondo Community of Greater Cleveland, British American Chamber of Commerce of Ohio, Building Hope in the City, City Club of Cleveland, Cleveland Council on World Affairs, Council on International Programs USA, Cleveland Cultural Gardens, Collaborative Chambers Alliance, Connecting Cleveland, Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Global Shapers Cleveland, NAACP of Cleveland, Ohio Progressive Asian Women's Leadership, Refugee Response, Smart Development Inc., US Together, and US CRI of Cleveland. So with that, I think we come to the end of tonight's forum. And again, once again, thanks everybody.